They sold my childhood home because my brother needed cash. So I bought the neighboring property and turned it into a sanctuary they could never enter. The text message from Mom felt like a punch to the gut. We need to talk. Family meeting tonight. Important news about the house. I'm Zoe. And that message marked the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Standing in my childhood home's kitchen 12 hours later, I wished I'd never shown up. We're selling the house, Dad announced, his voice steady as if he were discussing the weather. Caesar has an amazing business opportunity, and we're going to help him make it happen. The wooden spoon I'd been clutching, the same one I'd used to help Mom bake countless birthday cakes, clattered to the floor. You're what? Caesar leaned against the doorframe, that familiar smirk playing on his lips. It's a game changer, sis. Premium coffee shops across the city. We're talking artisanal blends, prime locations. Stop. I held up my hand. You're selling our home, the house we grew up in, for coffee shops? Mom stepped forward, her hands twisting her wedding ring like she always did when nervous. Honey, we've discussed this thoroughly. Caesar has a solid business plan. Solid? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Like the food truck venture last year? Or the cryptocurrency investment that emptied his savings? That's not fair, Caesar pushed off the doorframe. This is different. I've got investors lined up. Who? The same guys who convinced you to sink $20 into that bogus real estate scheme? Zoe? Dad's voice carried that warning tone I remembered from childhood. Your brother has matured. We believe in his vision. I turned to the window, staring at the maple tree I'd climbed countless times. The treehouse Dad built us still clung to its branches, weathered but standing. What about my room? My dark room? All those photographs I've been storing here? We'll help you move everything, Mom offered quickly. You can store them at your apartment. My apartment that's barely big enough for me? I spun around. This house isn't just property. It's our history. The marks on the wall showing how tall we grew. The dent in the living room where Caesar crashed his skateboard. The garden where we buried Rusty. It's just a house, Caesar said dismissively. We need to think about the future, not cling to the past. Something snapped inside me. Just a house? This is where we learned to ride bikes, where we had every Christmas morning, where we held each other after Grandma died. But sure, let's trade all that for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Zoe. Mom reached for my arm, but I pulled away. How much? I demanded. How much are you selling it for? Dad cleared his throat. The offer is $4.50. I'll buy it, I said instantly. I have savings. I can get a loan. We've already accepted their offer. Dad cut me off. The papers are signed. The room spun slightly. You didn't even give me a chance? Your own daughter? Honey? Mom's voice cracked. We didn't think no. You didn't think. Not about me, anyway. I grabbed my purse from the counter. When do the new owners take possession? 30 days, Dad answered quietly. I nodded, fighting back tears. Perfect. Just enough time to watch another piece of my life get sacrificed for Caesar's dreams. Don't be dramatic. Caesar rolled his eyes. I'll make it up to you. When the business takes off, save it, I snapped. I don't want your promises or your overpriced coffee. I want my home. Zoe, please, Mom called as I headed for the door. Don't leave like this. I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. You know what hurts the most? You didn't even ask me. Didn't consider how this would affect me. It's always been about Caesar, his needs, his dreams, his mistakes. Well, congratulations. You finally managed to sell the last piece of my childhood to fund another one of his fantasies. That's not fair, Caesar protested. Life's not fair, I replied, meeting his eyes. But don't worry, big brother. I'm sure this time will be different. This time your brilliant plan will work out perfectly. And if it doesn't, well, there's always Mom and Dad's retirement fund to fall back on, right? I walked out before they could respond, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. Through the windshield, I could see the house next door, old Mrs. Patterson's place. The for sale sign had gone up last week. An idea began to form in my mind. Maybe I couldn't save my childhood home, but I could do something else, something that would make them all understand exactly what they'd thrown away. I pulled out my phone and dialed my realtor's number. Hey, Sarah. Remember that property we discussed? The Patterson house? I want to make an offer, today. You did what? Autumn nearly choked on her wine. We were sitting on my tiny apartment balcony, the evening air thick with summer heat and the weight of my decision. I bought Mrs. Patterson's house, I repeated, swirling the red wine in my glass. The offer was accepted this morning. Okay. Autumn set her glass down carefully. And you're planning to turn it into a women's retreat center just like that? Why not? It's perfect. 5 bedrooms, huge garden, that amazing sunroom. I leaned forward. Plus, it's right next door to my family's house. Every time Caesar looks out his precious coffee shop window, he'll see what I built from scratch. Girl. Autumn's eyes widened. That's either brilliant or crazy. Maybe both. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mom. I ignored it, like I had the previous dozen. You should see the property, I continued. I'm meeting the inspector tomorrow. Want to come? Obviously. Someone needs to make sure you don't completely lose your mind. She paused. Have you actually run the numbers on this? I pulled out my laptop. I've been working on nothing else for the past week. Look. As I showed her the spreadsheets, business plan, and market research, Autumn's skepticism slowly transformed into interest. There's nothing like this in the area, I explained. Women need a place to reset, to heal, to figure out their next steps. I can offer workshops, temporary housing, counseling services. Using your photography studio space, Autumn finished. Catching on. Art therapy. Exactly. I closed the laptop. I've already talked to 3 potential investors. They love the concept. The sliding door creaked open, and my neighbor Rachel poked her head out. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you really starting a women's retreat? That's the plan. Rachel stepped onto the balcony. My sister could have used something like that last year when she was going through her divorce. She ended up sleeping on my couch for 3 months because she had nowhere else to go. See? I gestured to Rachel. This is exactly why my phone buzzed again, this time with Caesar's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. You'll have to talk to them eventually, Autumn said gently. No, I really don't. I stood up and walked to the railing. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. Rachel cleared her throat. Well, if you need any help with the retreat, I'm a licensed social worker. I'd love to be involved. I turned back surprised. Really? Absolutely. I can help set up support programs, maybe run some group sessions. The next morning, Autumn and I met the inspector at Mrs. Patterson's house. Standing in the grand entryway with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, I felt a surge of certainty. The bones are good, the inspector said, tapping the walls. You'll need to update the electrical in the east wing, and the roof needs work, but overall a familiar voice cut through from outside. Zoe, what are you doing here? Caesar stood on the sidewalk, coffee cup in hand, staring up at the house. Buying property, I called back. Isn't that what our family does now? He jogged up the front steps. Come on, sis. Don't be like this. Let's talk. About what? How you convinced Mom and Dad to sell my childhood home for your latest scheme? It's not a scheme. I've got everything planned out. Look. He reached for his phone. Save your pitch deck. I cut him off. I'm busy with my own business plan. His eyes narrowed. What business plan? You'll see soon enough. I turned to the inspector. Shall we continue the tour? Zoe. Caesar grabbed my arm. What are you up to? I yanked free. Creating something meaningful. Something that actually helps people. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that concept. Autumn stepped between us. I think you should leave Caesar. He backed away, hands raised. Fine. But this isn't over. No, I agreed, watching him retreat down the walkway. It's just beginning. Back inside, Autumn whistled low. Well, that was intense. Good, I said, running my hand along the vintage wallpaper. I want him to worry. I want them all to see what they threw away. Just remember, Autumn cautioned, the best revenge is living well. I smiled, already envisioning the transformation this house would undergo. Trust me, I plan to live extremely well, and I'm going to help other women do the same. The inspector cleared his throat. Shall we check out the second floor? As we climbed the grand staircase, I could feel the house's potential humming through my fingers on the banister. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. This was about creating something bigger than myself, something lasting. And if it happened to make Caesar and my parents uncomfortable in the process, well, that was just karma doing its work. The contractor just quit. I slumped onto a dust-covered chair in what would eventually be the retreat's main office. Said the electrical work is more complicated than he thought. Rachel looked up from the stack of permit applications spread across the floor. That's the third one this month. I know. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off an approaching headache. The renovation was already 2 weeks behind schedule, and my savings were draining faster than expected. A knock on the front door echoed through the empty house. We're closed, I called out, not in the mood for another nosy neighbor asking about construction noise. I saw your sign outside, a voice responded, about the women's retreat. Rachel and I exchanged glances. I hadn't put up any sign yet. Curious. I walked to the door. A young woman stood on the porch, hugging herself despite the warm weather. Her eye makeup was smudged, and she carried a small duffel bag. I'm Gemma, she said quickly, as if afraid I'd shut the door. I know you're not open yet, but I saw the workers here, and I just really need a place to stay. We're still under construction, I explained. Nothing's ready. Please. Her voice cracked. I can't go back to my apartment. He'll be waiting. The desperation in her eyes hit me like a physical force. I recognized that look. The same one I'd seen in the mirror countless times after my family's betrayal, but deeper, more urgent. "Come in," I heard myself say. "The kitchen's somewhat functional. We can at least make coffee." 20 minutes later, Gemma sat at our makeshift break table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "I left this morning while he was at work. 3 years of she trailed off. I just couldn't do it anymore." Rachel, in full social worker mode, was already making calls to domestic violence shelters. I watched Gemma's hands trembling around the mug and made a decision. "The West Wing bedroom is finished," I said. "It's basic, but it has a bed and a working bathroom. You can stay there while we figure things out." Rachel shot me a warning look. "Zoe, we don't have the proper permits yet, then we'll get them faster." I turned back to Gemma. "No one should have to go back to a place that doesn't feel safe." Later that evening, as I was sorting through construction quotes, I heard voices outside. Through the window, I saw Caesar talking to one of the remaining contractors in the driveway. I stormed out. "What do you think you're doing?" Caesar spun around, all innocent smiles. "Just asking about the renovation timeline, trying to plan the coffee shop opening, you know? By interfering with my contractors? Interfering? I'm networking, sis. That's what successful business people do." "Get off my property." "Your property?" He laughed. "This whole thing is a joke. You don't know the first thing about running a business." "No?" I stepped closer. "At least I'm not burning through our parents' retirement fund on overpriced coffee beans." His smile faltered. "That's not." "Leave now and stop harassing my contractors." After he left, the contractor approached me awkwardly. "Look, maybe this job is more than we can handle. I'll pay you 15% above your quote," I said quickly. "Just please don't quit." He hesitated, then nodded. "Deal. But your brother mentioned some potential zoning issues." "I'll handle the zoning." I was already dialing Rachel's number as I walked back inside. I found Gemma in the kitchen organizing our meager supply of dishes. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I want to help." She placed a mug in the cabinet. "This place. What you're doing here. It matters?" "My brother doesn't think so. I saw him outside." Gemma's voice hardened. "Men like that, they can't stand seeing women build something without them." I looked at her sharply. "You heard our conversation?" She nodded. "Reminded me of my ex, always trying to tear down anything I was proud of." Something clicked in my mind. "Would you be interested in a job? We need someone to coordinate with contractors, manage supplies." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. "But I don't have experience." "You have perspective. That's worth more." That night, reviewing budget spreadsheets in my apartment, I realized Gemma's arrival had shifted something. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. It was about creating a space where women like Gemma could rebuild their lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please call us. We're worried about you." I typed back, "Don't be. I'm finally building something that matters." Then I turned back to my spreadsheets. Determination renewed. Let Caesar try his sabotage. He had no idea how strong women could be when they stood together. "There's a zoning board meeting tomorrow," Mom announced, appearing at my construction site unannounced. "Your father and I will be there to support Caesar's permit application." I kept hammering, pretending the nail I was driving into the new bookshelf was my frustration. "Of course you will. Zoe, please, this feud has to end." She stepped closer, dodging a pile of lumber. "We're still family." "Family?" The hammer slipped, nearly catching my thumb. "Is that what you call selling my childhood home without even consulting me?" "The coffee shop will be amazing. Caesar's really thought it through this time." "Mrs. Foster?" Gemma appeared in the doorway. "The inspector's here for the electrical certification." Mom's eyes narrowed. "You already have people staying here? Without proper permits?" "She works here," I said firmly. "And our permits are in order." "Are they?" She pulled out her phone. "Because Caesar mentioned some concerns about stop." I set the hammer down hard. "Just stop." "Caesar's concerns are nothing but attempts to sabotage my project because he's worried about competition." "Competition? This is a women's shelter." "It's a retreat center," I corrected. "And yes, competition. Because while he's selling overpriced lattes, I'll be actually helping people rebuild their lives." The inspector appeared behind Gemma, clipboard in hand. Mom took the hint and left, but not before saying, "We'll see you at the zoning meeting." The next day, I sat in the municipal building's stuffy meeting room watching Caesar charm the zoning board with his polished presentation about revitalizing the neighborhood with his artisanal coffee empire. And as you can see, he gestured to his slides, the property's current residential zoning classification would be better served by converting to commercial use. I gripped my folder tighter, waiting for my turn. Mom and Dad sat in the front row beaming at their golden boy. Finally, the board chairman called my name. I walked to the podium spreading out my documentation. "Board members, I'm here to oppose the rezoning application and present my own proposal for the adjacent property." I met Caesar's startled gaze. The neighborhood doesn't need another coffee shop. It needs a safe space for women in crisis. I detailed our plans, counseling services, temporary housing, job training programs. With each point, I saw the board members' interest grow. Furthermore, I continued, we've already secured partnerships with local mental health providers and employment agencies. Excuse me, Caesar interrupted, but my sister's project lacks proper licensing for residential facilities. Actually, I pulled out a document. We received our provisional license yesterday. Unlike some businesses, we did our homework before making promises. A murmur rippled through the room. Dad's smile had disappeared. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Foster, your rezoning application could impact both properties. Given the circumstances, we'll need to review. This is ridiculous. Caesar stood up. She's only doing this to spite me. Spite? I laughed. You really think everything revolves around you, don't you? Children, please. Mom started to rise. No, Mom. Let him speak. I turned to Caesar. Tell everyone how you convinced our parents to sell our home for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Tell them about the contractors you tried to poach, the rumors you've been spreading about our permits. I was protecting our family's investment. Caesar's face reddened. This neighborhood needs upgrading, not some depressing shelter. It's not depressing, a voice called from the back. Gemma stood up, shoulders straight. It's hope. When I left my abusive ex, Zoe's retreat gave me a chance to start over. How many lattes can do that? Silence fell over the room. The chairman cleared his throat again. Given the complexity of these proposals, we'll need time to review both applications. Meeting adjourned. Outside, Dad caught up to me. Zoe, this vendetta has gone too far. Vendetta? I shook my head. Look around, Dad. See those women? I pointed to where Gemma stood with two other retreat residents. They're why I'm doing this. Not everything is about Caesar. But the family made its choice. I stepped back. Now I'm making mine. And unlike Caesar's coffee shop dreams, I'm actually helping people. Mom appeared at his side. Honey, please save it. I turned away. I'll see you at the next meeting. Bring your checkbook. Caesar might need more startup capital when this falls through. Walking to my car, I heard Gemma call out that was amazing. I managed to smile, but my hands were shaking. Standing up to my family had cost more than I'd expected, but seeing their faces when Gemma spoke, that made it worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. How'd it go? I typed back, War declared, battle lines drawn, but we're winning. Because this wasn't just about zoning anymore. This was about proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. It's living purposefully. Smile. The photographer from the local newspaper adjusted her camera. One more with the whole group. 3 months after the zoning battle, our retreat center was officially open. 20 women, including Gemma, gathered on the front steps. The renovated Victorian house gleamed behind us, its fresh paint and new sign catching the morning sun. This is surreal, Rachel whispered beside me. We're actually trending on social media. The article about our opening had gone viral overnight. Local woman transforms family drama into haven for abuse survivors. The headline alone had brought in dozens of inquiries. Miss Foster? A reporter raised his hand. Your brother's coffee shop opens next door next week. Any comments? This isn't about my brother, I replied firmly. It's about these women and their stories. Like Maria here, who's starting her own business after taking our entrepreneurship workshop. Maria stepped forward beaming. The retreat gave me confidence to pursue my catering dreams. Next month, I'm cooking for my first corporate event. More questions followed, but movement across the street caught my eye. Mom stood on our old house's porch, watching. She'd aged somehow in these past months, her hair grayer, her shoulders more stooped. Excuse me, I said to the reporters. Gemma, could you handle the rest of the questions? Crossing the street felt like crossing an ocean. Mom didn't move as I approached. The house looks beautiful, she said quietly. You've done amazing work. Thanks. I stood awkwardly, hands in my pockets. How's Caesar's shop coming along? She hesitated. Having some supplier issues. The premium beans he ordered didn't arrive. Of course, they didn't. Zoe, please. She turned to face me. I know we hurt you. But seeing what you've built here, maybe it was meant to be this way. Meant to be? I laughed. Mom, you sold my home without even talking to me. And look what you did with that pain. She gestured to the retreat. You turned it into something beautiful, something meaningful. Before I could respond, Gemma called from across the street. Zoe, the TV crew is here. TV crew? Mom's eyes widened. Local news, I explained. They're doing a feature on women-owned businesses in the area. That's wonderful. She paused. Caesar tried to get them interested in the coffee shop, but what? They said artisanal coffee wasn't newsworthy enough. I bit back a smile. I should go. Wait. Mom grabbed my arm. There's something you should know. Your father and we're worried about Caesar's finances. The shop's renovations cost more than expected and stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to know. Whatever hole he's dug himself into, it's not my problem. Back at the retreat, the TV crew was setting up in our newly finished community room. Women gathered around, sharing stories of how they'd found us. The photography classes helped me see beauty again, one said into the microphone. I learned to trust myself here, added another. Gemma, now our official program coordinator, organized everyone for the segment. Zoe, they want to interview you last. Something about saving the best for final cut. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana, sat across from me. Your story is compelling, she said. Converting family conflict into community support. Mind if we dig deeper? Actually, I do. I straightened my shoulders. The conflict that led me here isn't the story. These women are. Their resilience, their courage to start over. That's what matters. Diana smiled. Even better. Tell me about them. For the next hour, I shared our success stories. The domestic violence survivor who became a counselor. The divorced mother who started her own online business. The elderly woman who found community after losing her husband. One last question, Diana said. Your brother's coffee shop opens next door soon. Any message for him? I looked out the window at our old house at Mom still standing on the porch. Just this. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to what you were meant to do all along. After the crews left, Gemma brought me coffee, not from an artisanal shop but our simple kitchen machine. The waiting list is up to 30 women now, she said. We might need to think about expanding. Expanding? I nearly choked on my coffee. The property 2 doors down just went up for sale. Her eyes sparkled. Just saying. I watched the sunset paint our retreat in golden light, thinking about Mom's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was meant to be. My phone buzzed. A text from Autumn. Just saw the news crew. You're going to be famous. I typed back, not me. The retreat, the women, their stories, because that's what mattered now. Not revenge, not family drama, but the lives we were helping rebuild one day at a time. Though I had to admit, the fact that we were thriving while